Hey everyone out there in YouTube land, this is Darth Judicar22, and once again this is one of my videos, and I hope you enjoy it. This is my answer to the Star Wars Questionnaire. I had originally intended to save this for later, but I decided to go ahead and do it just for fun. I hope you enjoy. I'll admit this is kind of a tough call to make. Both the Jedi and the Sith are sort of to their own extremes, as another commentator pointed out. However, I'm going to have to go with the Sith on this, but with a condition. The Sith, and by extension the dark side itself, are not as black and white as the movies and sometimes the books have suggested. There have been Sith in the expanded universe that use the dark side not as a force for evil, but in their own way as a force for good. These individuals were different from traditional Sith in that they believed that the dark side was a means to an end, not necessarily something that was evil. One such example of this was Darth Revan, who, instead of focusing on power centers and other things belonging to the Republic, he instead focused on seemingly unimportant systems and other things in order to keep the Republic strong for what he believed to be an eventual war against the greater Sith Empire. A later example was Darth Caedus, who brought the galaxy into the Second Galactic Civil War in an attempt to unite it under a banner of peace. If I was a Jedi or a Sith, I would probably be a Sith, much in the same vein as these two individuals. This is kind of an odd choice, but my favorite planet would probably be Terrace, primarily during the period of the Galactic Cold War. During this period, Terrace was a wild planet, but it was recovering from probably one of the greatest devastations in galactic history prior to the destruction of Alderaan. Other than that, I'm also a fan of the planet Alderaan, at least before it blew up, and Corellia for its rich history and connection to several main characters throughout the series. While it is different from traditional saber designs, I have always been interested in this idea of the saber staff or the double-bladed lightsaber. But I'd also like to incorporate it in this idea of being able to detach the two lightsabers from each other, so I could switch to Jarkai dual blade combat as well, or simply use it as a single lightsaber if needed. In keeping with Sith tradition, I would utilize a red synthetic lightsaber crystal as opposed to a natural bone Ilum crystal, though if I could get my hands on a red one, I probably would be fine with that. As for my lightsaber combat style, I would probably be a practitioner of Nyman, the 6th lightsaber form, mostly because it incorporates elements of all other forms and is capable of chaining force attacks with it. I'd also use Jarkai dual blade fencing when I separate my saber staff to two lightsabers, but this might not be as important at all times. Well, this is kind of tricky. I like a lot of the species in Star Wars, but if I had to pick just one, it would be the Chiss. Why? Well, they are a species that has existed pretty much as long as the expanded universe has, through Grand Admiral Thrawn, and their inclusion in Star Wars The Old Republic, I believe, makes them even more interesting, showing that they have an extensive history of interaction with the rest of the galaxy despite being a xenophobic species. All in all, the Chiss have always been a fascinating species in Star Wars, and I really hope they actually keep them in the Legends continuity. During his reign as Commander-in-Chief of the Galactic Alliance, Jacen Solo, later Darth Caedus, created the Imperial II class Star Destroyer known as the Anakin Solo. While it gained notoriety for taking part in things such as the firebombing of Kashyyyk, this is probably my favorite vehicle, just because it's really actually quite impressive, and it was the flagship of one of my favorite characters from the expanded universe. My Jedi Master would probably be Satele Shan, mostly because she was able to balance between the warrior and the scholar. But that's just my opinion, really. My Sith Master would be a lot harder because it has to be someone who reflects this idea of both light and darkness, not just one or the other. Someone who can use the dark side for good as well as for evil. As such, my Sith Master would be Darth Caedus, the fallen Jacen Solo. This probably shouldn't come as too much of a surprise, but the name I would use would be Darth Judicar. I'll admit that I did not come up with it. It was one of the finalists for the Darth Who contest, which selected the Sith name for Jacen Solo. While its actual origin in the English or any other languages was never confirmed, more than likely this came from the word adjudicator, which simply means justice. Within the continuity of Star Wars, on the other hand, it also means basically the final judge, which is kind of an interesting meaning for a name for a Sith, in my opinion, and I happen to like it. Truth is, I like all the Star Wars movies to varying degrees. I have a hard time picking a favorite or a least favorite, but as such, I'm probably going to have to pick Star Wars Episode 3. It is a prequel movie, but it's actually really good. It sets up a lot of the events of the original trilogy pretty well, and it brings a sort of finality to the prequel trilogy that just kind of catches your attention and grips you. As I said before, I have a hard time picking my least favorite or favorite movies. That being said, however, probably my least favorite would be Star Wars Episode 1. I mean, it's a decent movie. It actually has some really good music and really good characters, mostly Darth Maul, because honestly, he's an interesting character, and it sets up a lot of the story to come, including giving more character to the Emperor Sidious. Honestly, I can overlook midi-chlorians for the most part, even as just bizarre that was. I'm actually quite fond of how they kind of made fun of it with the comic Darths and droids. That being said, the reason why I don't like it, I can't stand Jar Jar Binks. I mean, what is up with that character? He basically was one of the big problems with the prequel trilogy, in my opinion. He was just annoying. He had no real flavor to his character other than being an annoying Gungan who happened to be partially responsible for the formation of the Galactic Empire. What was George Lucas thinking? Was he smoking something when he came up with Jar Jar? One thing that I've always found interesting is the Sith species from the Old Republic era. However, they get kind of dropped after the events of Star Wars The Old Republic, and I think that there is more that can be told about them. I think that their story could be continued past this, maybe even not only as the villains. I mean, in the early days of the Jedi Order, in one of the novels, they were actually part of the Jedi, ironically enough. Also, I've always found the Sith Triumvirate interesting, primarily Darth Nihilus and Darth Sion, and I would like to expand on this idea of three Sith Lords and having a bizarre connection to the Force that is different from other Sith and Jedi. Maybe even sort of a combination of the two, the return of the Sith purebloods after the events of Star Wars The Old Republic, and a sort of a second coming of the Sith Triumvirates. Okay, the truth is, I don't really have a favorite soundtrack. I don't really pay attention to the whole soundtrack unless there's a music score that catches my attention. So basically any song like Duel of the Fates, the intro song, or of course the Imperial March is pretty much what I like, but I don't have a really favorite soundtrack. No, I can honestly say I did not. I just never got interested in it, and, well, it's not like everything against it, I just never did it. The expanded universe, either through the novels or the video games or the comics, gives us more stories to Star Wars. It gives us an opportunity to learn more about established characters, to learn more about new characters, and to just become more and more interested in the franchise. And that is something that is interesting. Star Wars is more than just movies, and I think people sometimes forget that. And also that it gives us more insight to characters that are less known from the movies, such as Darth Plagueis, who only got a mention in episode 3. He got his own novel, even though that focused more on Sidious's backstory. Well, that is kind of a weird question. My least favorite thing would probably be how it sometimes focuses on sort of cliched material, such as the zombie apocalypse angle and Death Troopers, or just focuses on really annoying and unlikable characters like anything starring Jar Jar Binks. Oh wow, this is a tough question. What does Star Wars mean to me? How do I answer this question? Well, it means a lot to me, really. I mean, it's movies, books, it's comics. I remember first reading a Star Wars novel. It was part of the Jedi Academy trilogy. It was the Dark Academy. No, it was the Jedi Academy trilogy. And it blew my mind, this idea that there was more to the franchise than just the movies. And when I started reading the Legacy of the Force books a little while ago, it also gripped me. I mean, this idea that Star Wars is something more than just a movie. It's become much more. It's part of our culture. I mean, as much as comic books have been recently, Star Wars is our mythology. It is our modern stories. It is how we tell not just a science fiction story. You can see Star Wars in anything, really, in any form of fiction. Romance, westerns, comedy, action. The list goes on, even fantasy. I mean, my favorite things about the Aragon books, the Inheritance cycle, is that the parallels I've found between it and Star Wars. And I just don't know what else to say. Star Wars is something that has stuck with me for a long time, and I think that I'll keep enjoying it, even if Disney's kind of ruining it. That's all I really have to say on the matter. Well, that's my answer to the Star Wars Questionnaire. It's probably a little bit overdone, but I wanted to answer it just to give people an idea of my thoughts on the franchise, and well, I will see you next time in my next Versus series video. I'm not going to tell you what it is just yet, but I hope you look forward to it. Bye.